So you can see we have all of our power cables and accessory circuits run up through the grommet here at the firewall. And what we're going to do, the reason we brought them all right there and we kind of have them sitting here is I built this electronics tray out of some plastic that I had. And this is actually going to mount right in this pocket here. And we're going to have a NOCO battery charger here that's going to go over to the main battery. And then the Garmin power switch is actually going to mount right here. And then right on the side here, we're going to put our Anderson connector for the solar panel, because that wiring is going to be running along the firewall here and coming straight down. So this is a close-up of the power electronics tray that I built. You can see the two holes right here, which correspond to the two holes right here. So the bolts can pass through it. It sandwiches up against the frame. The two mounting holes in the back here are for the Garmin power switch. And then right down here is where our NOCO battery charger is going to plug in. And all those cables are going to run nice and neatly out through the bottom here, and then we're going to have a service loop, much like this, just like that, underneath all of that. So just in case we need to pull that tray back out, it's as simple as unbolting it and pulling it up, and we have plenty of cable reach to allow us to get that back out of there and to work on it or troubleshoot. This is basically pieces that I've cut together or cut and formed together. You can see where I've got some screws retaining it from the backside. I've also taken some stainless penny nails and drilled through both pieces and ran them through with JB Weld plastic glue. And then they're actually attached together with JB Weld plastic glue as well. So this makes a pretty strong structure. This is going to be supported up at the top of the firewall. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to put a bracket down here to support the bottom, because that NOCO battery charger is pretty heavy, and if this vehicle is going to see off-road use and corrugations and things of that nature, it'll shake itself apart pretty quickly. So we want to make sure that we support it wherever we can. But right now I've got a rough sanding done to it, and all I need to do now is go do a finish sand to it and then paint it up, and I should be ready to mount all the accessories to it. To clean things up a little bit further, we took our solar wire, or our solar input, and our battery cable for the Goal Zero that were coming in one harness before, separated the cables. So now I have two harnesses, or two sets of wires going into one harness with the adhesive heat shrink. So now this makes one nice long harness here. This one can get coiled up over here and our solar can plug into it. And then this one here is going to run across the firewall all the way over to the battery into a breaker. Now, one thing we did do is we switched from this mesh style sheathing over to a cloth fabric style sheathing. This is a little bit more durable when it comes to the engine bay, so we don't have to worry about dirt and grime and all that stuff getting inside here. This will do a better job of keeping that out, and it looks a lot more factory as well. Coming out of the firewall grommet, we also have this 14x4 cable, and this is going to be hooked up to the Garmin power switch for our activation circuits for lights, for the reverse lights, the Weboost, possibly the fridge, and some USB ports. We're going to have another identical cable like this that's going to be going to the power switch that's actually going to run up to the front, because as Matt had said before, we're going to be changing the front bumper on this truck. We just pulled our last cable in through the firewall, and this is an extension cord. It's a 13 amp extension cord that's going to plug into a NOCO shore power plug. And I have that running same way up to the dash over the headliner here. And then it's coming out right behind the second row seat in the panel. It's going to come out with our bunch of cables down there. And then what I've done is I've actually taken the wall charger for the Goal Zero, and I've cut the plug off the end here, and I've done the exact same thing with the extension cord right here, and I'm going to connect these two wires together so it's one seamless cable from the plug in the front of the vehicle all the way back to the wall charger plug that's going to be plugging into the top of the Goal Zero. And to do that, I'm going to be using some heat shrink 16 to 14 gauge butt splices or butt connectors, and these are rated for 600 to 1000 volts. Now, before I go connect green to green, white to white, and black to black, it's always a good idea to double check that to make sure that the manufacturer didn't by chance screw up during production and switch the leads. So what I'm going to do is use my multimeter here, and we're going to check green to green. Okay, so that's good. Black to black. That one's good. And white to white. And that one's good. Because if you plug this thing in and this is wired wrong, really bad things happen. So it's always good to double check that. The other thing we're going to do when we join these cables together is we're not going to leave them all cut to that length, because otherwise we'll have 3 butt connectors sitting on top of each other like that, and it'll make the diameter of this harness much larger. Not to mention that if something were to come loose, there's more of a possibility of the 2 wires touching. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to stagger these like this. So we'll cut these wires to different lengths. Now that we have our butt terminals crimped and the outer jacket shrunk down, you can see how they're staggered. So this will keep this harness about the exact same thickness as the original. And then we're just going to slide down this heat shrink tubing here. It's all the way down, covering that up. Both sides like that. And then we're going to shrink that down, and that'll complete the repair. And just like that, we now have a one-piece 25-foot wall adapter cable for the Goal Zero. We're grouping all of our cables together and fixing them in place with zip ties. We're using the factory mounting holes in the metal panels here to attach our zip ties. You can see we've got one wrapped around and then another one attaching this zip tie to that zip tie, so that way it allows this harness free movement. We don't want anything fixed in place really tight because it can cause it to chafe on a metal edge. So we just want to make sure that everything floats nice and easy but isn't flopping all over the place. We've got that run all the way down to the bottom of this panel. Got our harnesses coming out, and then we put this plastic wireway on. That keeps our cables nice and neat. Going all the way over here, and then I cut some L brackets. This is a aluminum channel that I've bolted the Goal Zero down to, and then bolted that down to the L tracks, and that allows our cables to pass underneath. Right here you can see our 30 amp supply that's going to go to the center console. This is the solar input that I still have to terminate the ends on. And then back here you can see the charging cable that's coming from the alternator, and this is that extension cable that we just got done modifying, plugged into the back into the power charger. Moving to the inside of the truck, see we have our power cable pulled in for our seat heater circuit, and then the rest of our harness is running up and over to the center console over here, where our Blue Sea 6-gang fuse box is going to live. This white wire right here, this is 10x3 or 10-3 marine wire, and we've run that underneath the driver's seat because it's a nice low profile, and down the door sill, and then back into this panel. From there, that harness, or this 10-3 wire, separates into a bundle of 2 and 1. The single wire here is running up the headliner and running to the back. And that is actually coming out right here in the hatch now. And this is going to be the constant power supply for the rear backup camera, and also the Baja Designs dome lights that we're going to install as well. The other 2 wires in that bundle come out the bottom of the panel down here, and they're running up this wire track to the top right here with this one, and we have terminated the end of it with a Anderson power pole connector that is then going to plug into the 30 amp circuit on the Goal Zero. Then of course the other harness that we had up here, this is going to be vehicle power to charge the Goal Zero. That's going to plug into the back of this module on the back side. And then this end right here I need to terminate with these Anderson power poles as well, because that is going to plug in right here, and that's going to be our solar input. In the back here, you can see that 14x4 cable that was coming from the Garmin power switch. I've started removing the insulation from it, stripping that back right now. See where I'm scoring it down the center and pulling the wires out, because I need to have one of these wires run down and out from behind the tail light right here. And this is going to go down and power the flush mount Baja Designs rear bumper lights that we're going to be installing on the back of this truck. The other 3 wires here are going to be used for switchable circuits. One of those is actually going to be powering the 5G Drive Reach Weboost. And this guy is going to mount underneath this panel back here to the body. And you can see I've actually already run the antenna cable out through the vent here along the roof rack, and I've got the stubby mount on it right now. Eventually this roof rack is going to get changed out as well, so I didn't want to do anything too permanent, but that allows me to have enough slack and to get that wire where I want it to. Now remember what I said before, when you're running wires outside and you're going into the interior, you need to have a service loop so that water, if it's running down this cable, goes to the lowest point and drips off, instead of coming straight in and going right into that and then filling up the back of the truck with water. So you want to have a service loop. So that's what we've done right here. So if it doesn't drip off here and it somehow makes it here, it's touching the body, it's going to run off right there. So it's never going to travel upward into the body. I'm going to come in here and actually bevel these edges so we get rid of all the sharp points. And yeah, you can see underneath that allows us plenty of air for the Goal Zero to breathe and keep cool, and all of our cable management to pass underneath. We reinstalled the seats, and I've got those all hooked up and plugged in. Right now I'm working on running my cabling from the firewall over to the center console electronics tray right here. This is going to the Garmin power switch as well as this one. So right now I'm putting ring terminals onto these 8-gauge wires. Just like that. So I'm going to push in and then pull back to where it needs to be, and then we'll start crimping. And once she's tight, go ahead and release it. And as you can see, got our terminal crimped on. So now all we got to do is put some heat shrink tubing on there to protect that, and these 2 wires will be done. So since I don't have everything that's going to live on this electronics tray, I'm going to purposely leave all my wires long and not trim them down until we get everything that we're going to need. So most of this stuff is going to get a service loop and tied up behind this. But you can see that I am labeling my wires. This one is the constant power to the tailgate. This one here is the Goal Zero output positive and Goal Zero output negative. What I'm using is a Brady label maker, and I've selected my wire size, Garmin Plus right there. So I'm going to hit print. When you run into an instance where you have multiple red wires, multiple green wires, orange wires, whatever color wires you're using, it's a good idea to label them, so that way if you ever have to troubleshoot, you can quickly go to the bundle of wires, look for the label on it, and determine which end of the wire you're looking for and the location. This is the fuse box that we're going to be using. This is a 6-gang Blue Sea fuse box. It's got 6 power circuits, and then it's got a ground bus bar at the top that handles 6 circuits as well. For the time being, we're going to mount this with some adhesive Velcro, and again, it's probably just going to go right here for the time being until we get the ham radio and everything else that's going to go in here. Okay, so we've got the fuse box temporarily installed. The wires are routed. The front brackets are on for the Havas unit. You can see where the wiring harness from the firewall runs up and down this factory dash support, and it runs underneath the dash over to the grommet. And as far as the cabling and all that inside here, We've got it run up nice and tight next to it. Fuse box is sitting in the center, and everything is pulled away from the sides here so nothing will chafe. So until all those other products show up, that's about all I can do in the center console. We've got to tie up some loose wiring underneath the hood. The charging circuit for the Goal Zero still needs to be done, but we've ordered some billet battery terminals from SDHQ that we're going to tie those in with. We've got a little bit more that we're going to tie up here in the back, and then we're going to start moving into some mechanical goodies. Probably only about 12 to 15 psi in these bags right now. We're going to inflate them up to 60, and then we're going to mix some Dawn dish soap and some water, spray it all over the system, and check for leaks.